Shavua Tov, Gitvach.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Gutbach.
How are you? Good work.
Mario, I think you have an adorable grandson. He looks like a very, very sweet boy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Shavua Tov.
Oh, Gutbach.
G'davach. Hi. It's getting later and later.
Well, for the
We're
next,
done. We're getting ready. Hi, Mario.
Hi, Robbie.
Shavua Tov.
Hello.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
hi, Faggy.
Tavach, Ellen.
Oh,
Hi,
How
yeah,
are you?
Hi,
How
Peggy.
are you?
good.
Good, good. I forgot to thank Shaya for walking Ellie home.
It
We
was
were so busy talking about everything else that happened.
Hi, Shavua Tov.
Ezra's a hero.
Oh, yes.
You know, my neighbor Dahlia, they broke her front window
Hi.
Oh.
and her next door neighbor and Avi Heyman's house too.
What are you saying?
When was
Vandalism.
that? When was that? Last night?
When?
Either last night or early this morning. Maybe it's the same guy that Ezra met.
Ezra came upon a guy that he suspected was entering homes illegally and got into a bit of a kerfuffle with him. Managed to get roped, hit him in his flank. They called the police and they caught him. But I don't know what good is it going to do if they let him out.
And I don't know, you know, after I heard that, I thought maybe it's the same guy who was vandalizing all these houses,
Yeah,
3 houses.
yeah.
What happened? Terrible.
They broke the
Wow.
front
Wow,
windows
great
of
for
homes
Ezra.
on
Really
Highland
very
Street
nice
last
of
night.
Ezra.
Right, yeah.
Well, Ezra's on Hatzalah, so he made a call like that, and like 10 guys came out, and somebody called the police. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
but it took them 40 minutes to get to Dahlia. I mean, it's not a priority for them, I'm sure.
yes.
She okay?
Yeah, she's okay, but just
Right.
a little shook, shaken up.
And that was last night?
She doesn't know if it was last night or this morning. She got up this morning to see a stone. Somebody threw like a stone through her front window,
And it broke
Like
the
the
window.
living room?
broke the window, and the neighbors, two panes of their windows. And then when I walked down the block in front of Avi Heyman's house, his front window is all boarded up too. So everybody has to be careful.
Okay,
Good. Yeah.
we are on Perek Ches, Shmuel Beis. Pasuk Aleph, Vayach Rechein. After the episode where David HaMelech wanted to build the Beis HaMikdash, and Kodesh Baruch Hu said he's not going to be the one to do it. Vayach David et Plishtim vayachniim. So David went on a military campaign. His concept was, Rashi in Divrei Yomim says that since I'm not going to one who's going to build it, at least I'm going to make all the preparations so that when my son comes, everything will be ready to go.
I don't understand.
And the Abarbanel says, what is the connection with going out and fighting Plishtim? Because the Barbanel says, Shelo haya adayin zman menucha vashkeit. Kodesh Baruch Hu told David through Nosan HaNavi that the Beis HaMikdash has to be built in a time of menucha. So perhaps David thought in his heart that it's not time. I have to go and make more attempts to pacify the region. And that's sort of the connection between this parsha and the last parsha. It says in Yalkut Shimoni, Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar la Kadosh Baruch Hu David, David ein abor mismalim michol yoso, ela im kein moshkin lo ama mimakam karov. Im ata poshet yadcha beplishtim ata mibarech. It means, if you go and attack the Plishtim, you will be blessed. There has to be something for bracha. You have to be mishtadel. In order to get bracha from Hashem, tzarich adam lishtadel ulatchil shafat sinor, va'achar ze yosif Hashem b'birchaso. That in order to get bracha from Hashem regarding this battle, you have to start the battle yourself. The pasuk ends, "Vayikach David et meteg ha'ama miyad Plishtim." David took whatever the meteg ha'ama is. There's going to be a debate what this is. Rashi says in Divrei Yomim that it refers to Gat, the city of Gat. There were 5 cities of the Plishtim: Aza, Ashdod, Ekron, Ashkelon, and Gat. Now remember, David hung out by Achish Melech Gat. So it sounds like Gat was like the capital city. And Meteg ha'ama is like a stick that is used to lead animals by striking them. So the city of Gat, says Rashi, is Meteg ha'ama because it's the Makkel Rodeh B'chol HaPlishtim. It's Metropolitan Shel Malachim. It's like the capital city where the kings live. We don't see this concept mentioned by Aza or Ashdod, Ekron, or Ashkelon, the concept of Malchus. But by Achish Melech Gat, that is so David made sure to capture the capital city, Meteg ha'ama. Now, there is a Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. It says, Lefisha Karat Yitzchak im Plishtim Brit. Avimelech, not only did he have relations with Avram, he had relations with Yitzchak. And in Bereshis, it describes a covenant between Yitzchak and Avimelech. It says, Vayomer ra'or ra'inu ki haya Hashem imach, va'nomer tihina Allah. I see Hashem is with you. Let's make a covenant between us. Ma'asa Yitzchak karas amachas mimeteg hachamor. He tore a sort of a piece of stick from like the saddle of his donkey. Shahai rochev alav. V'natan lahem. He gave it to Avimelech. Brit shvua. Ukishamalach David ratzah lavo le'eretz Plishtim. V'la yachol ner shvua. But there was a shvua between Avimelech and Klal Yisrael and Yitzchak. So David felt he had to take back that. Apparently, maybe this Meteg ha'ama was preserved in their capital city. Ad shlakach mem od brit shvua Yitzchak. This is what's meant that he took this Meteg ha'ama. Now, the covenant, say the Meforshim, in based on Sota Yud Amar Aleph, that the bris, the covenant had gone away. Already in the time in Shoftim, Perek Yud Gimel, when we learned about Shimshon, it says, Hu yachel Hoshia et Yisrael. The word chal means to abrogate, to be made for the neder. So already in the time of Shimshon, this covenant already been broken. It says in Breshis, Im tishkor li ulanini ulanechdi. We have to not attack each other, our grandchildren. It's the Plishtim who broke the covenant. They attacked Klal Yisrael. They put Klal Yisrael under pressure under the time of Shimshon. Kivan shetzad echad, batelu tagam atzad hasheni poter melkaima. If you have a covenant between two nations, and one nation breaks it, then you don't have to hold by the shvu anymore. So therefore, but still, for Marisayan, Dover HaMelech did not want to be machal the bris as long as that sign, this Metega Amma, was located in the Plishtim. That's why the first thing he did is he took it away from them.
Was David supposed to, either through the Navi or through the Urim V'Tumim, supposed to get permission to fight the Plishtim?
Doesn't say right here, it doesn't say anything about David going to the Navi or going to the Sanhedrin to get permission. We may deal with that a little bit later on tonight, that issue. We're going to see a number of battles in this parak. Look at Pasuk Beis. Vayachet Moav. Now I sent everyone a picture on Friday, and you can see in the map the various regions, right? If you look at the
Yeah.
Navi group, so Moab is just east of the Dead Sea. Plishtim you can see. So Moab, Vayimdadem b'chevel ashkevo tamartza. What they did, they lied them on the ground, and they measured them with ropes, the men. If they were 2 rope lengths long, then they would be killed. If there was only 1 rope length long, they kept them alive. The remaining people who were not killed became like schleppers for David HaMelech. Now, the Radak brings the Midbar Rabbah, the Breshis Rabbah, Bavur shahargu et avi v'imo bebarcho b'nei shol. If you remember, Shmuel Aleph, Perek Chav Gimel, it says, Vayinachem epnei melech Moav. Nakam mehem v'harag mehem shnei shlishim. Meaning, if you remember, we learned that David HaMelech planted his family with Melech Moab. And Melech Moab over there, the Medrash says, killed all of David's family. So here, David is taking revenge against Moab. And by doing this, lying them down, it's a derech bizoyon. And 2/3 of the men were killed this way. One of his brothers was saved and was not killed. So that's why that one chevel was the siman that they would stay alive. Now, it's interesting. The Midrashim pick up on this. This actually is a Gemara in Sanhedrin Lamed Tes Amud Beis. Amrav Yochanan Mishum Hashem ben Yochai. Hainu Damrin Shimineu Bei Abba Lezel Begarga. That means Abba is a forest. That means, if you think about it, the axe that is used to chop a forest down comes from the forest itself. So they're giving us an image. Remember, David HaMelech comes from Moab. So just like the forest is chopped down by a member of the forest, by wood that is joined with metal to be an axe. So David HaMelech HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to do the din with Moab. He did it with somebody from Moab himself, David HaMelech.
It's like Mita Keneged Mita.
Yeah, if it would have been somebody else, they would have said this is cruelty. But Moab was one of them, and he treated them bedin. By the fact that he had killed their parents, David HaMelech is basically carrying out revenge. And the Midbar Rabbah says very clearly, in one of David's, when he was escaping from Shaul, David deposited his parents with the king of Moab. He was afraid that they would fall into the hands of Shaul. He figured, well, I'm from Rusa Moavia, they're not going to do anything to my parents. That's why it says in the pasuk there, but the Medrash says, Melech Moav Hargain, he killed them. One brother escaped. And Nachash didn't want to give up the brother. That was the chesed that Nachash did with David. Therefore, now comes the time for the Nakama of David HaMelech to Moab. Pasuk Gimel, Vayach David et had Ezer ben Rechov Melech Tzova. Now, David is going to strike against Had-Ezer Melech Tzova. La'ashiv Yado b'nar Prat. This is on the way to the Euphrates. So this is in Syria. Aram, near the city of Hamat, which is north in Syria. And that is where he conquered Had-Ezer. Vayilkod David mimenu pasuk daled. David struck 1,700 parashim, 1,700 horsemen, V'esrim elef ish ragli, 20,000 infantry. Vayaker David et kol harechev, vayoter mimenu mea rechev. He cut off the hoofs of some of the horses. He left 100 for 100 chariots, because there were 4 horses for every chariot. Now, Rashi says that She'okar David is ragli asusim k'dei shelo yavor al iser shelo yarbelo susim. It says in the Torah that a melech should not have too many horses. You should only have enough horses for your chariots. So he left enough horses for his chariots. And this comes on because of the issur of a Jewish king having too many horses. Now, what is the reason for the issur of having too many horses? So it's a machlokes in Parsha Shoftim between Rashi and the Ramban. One approach, Rashi, is that if he has too many horses, he's going to bring the people back to Mitzrayim with the horses. Oh, the Ramban, Mishum de lo ratza Torah, Shamelech yiftach b'susav, as opposed to being boitech in Hashem. That's the pasuk in Tehillim, Sheker asus l'tshua. Now, why now would it be concerned that the people are going to go back to Egypt? That it seems that if it's based on that reason doesn't exist anymore. Now the Ran explains, it also says, Kesef v'zav lo yarbelo. that silver and gold, a king shouldn't have too much. But that's the pshat, is you shouldn't raise taxes. A king should not raise taxes to get the silver and gold. But if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it to you because you did some kind of conquering, then there's no isser. So the Ran wants to say the same thing by horses.
Can I just say, it states that David HaMelech disabled the horses. Would that be viewed as Tsar Balei Chayim?
Absolutely. And we're going to deal with that in a minute. By cutting off the hoofs, so the shaila is, how could David HaMelech do it? It's Tsar Balei Chayim, like Barbara is saying. So, not only Tsar Balei Chayim, it's also Bal Tashkis. Here's a good horse, and you're destroying it. There's a lav in the Torah of Bal Tashkis. So, Yesh Loimar, that the loy nesar tsar balei chayim ela kishoisa kain b'li tzarech. It's tsar balei chayim if you just torture them for no reason. If there's a reason, then you can do tsar balei chayim. What comes up very importantly, medical experimentation. Now, since David HaMelech did this to avoid the Isser of Yerbelus Usisim, it's considered that he had a tzarech. The Ramah in Even HaEzer says, "L'chol davar hanitzrach l'refua," any medical experimentation, or l'shar dvarim shem l'tzorcho or l'shtamsho, at any purpose, less be mishum tzar balei chayim. I mean, when we shecht an animal. Now, we know it's a humane way of killing an animal, but there's probably tsar balei chayim there as well. But it's litzorech, for food. So there's no isser of tsar balei chayim in that case. And certainly medical experimentation, experiments that are done in animals to benefit medical science. According to Jewish law, there's not a problem with that.
If there was, you wouldn't be able to get a pig heart to put into a human.
Exactly. So the Isser of Balei Chaim is, the Isser of Tzar Balei Chaim is certainly raised. Pasuk Hey. Vatavo Aram Damesek. So he's up in the north in Syria, and there are different Arams. We'll see. There's going to be Aram Tzova, which is Aleppo. Aram Naharayim, where Avram Avinu came from. Aram Macha, and there's Aram Damesek. Aram Damesek is Damascus, which was the capital. Rashi says, this is a pasuk in Divrei Yomim, that this was also Kibush Yochid, Ellen. David HaMelech went off on his own. He was not commanded by Sanhedrin or Navi to capture Syria. He wanted to expand the borders of Eretz Yisrael, to give us maybe a buffer zone. So again, all of this was to prepare the ground for his son. So Vatavor on Damesek Lazor Ladazer Melech Tzova. The Aram Damesek came to help Adazer. Vayach David Ba'aram 22,000 ish. David smote 22,000 people in
Why would he first attack Sova before Aram Damesek, when Sova is further north in Syria?
Maybe it was a richer area. Then he just didn't conquer them. Yosem David Nitzivim Baran Damesek, he put ambassadors there. These were not, David HaMelech is planting governmental officials connected to his government in these foreign capitals. And Vatihi Aram David. So Aram became like a a tributary country for David, Lavodino se mincha, for slaves, for sending gifts. Vayosha Hashem is David b'chol asher alach. And Hashem is helping David in all of these actions. Because he captured now the metropolitan, Damascus, the other Bnei Aram did not fight with him. That's the Vayosh Hashem as David. Now, the Sifri, Parshas Ekev, says, David asa shelo k'Torah. David really was going against what the Torah says. HaTorah Amra, Mishetikavshu Eretz Yisrael, Tevi Rishayim Lichbosh Chutz La'aretz. After you conquer all of Eretz Yisrael, we give you the permission to go conquer other areas. V'hu lo asakein. All of Israel wasn't conquered yet. Elachazer v'kovash Aram Naraim v'Aram Tzova. He first went to the Aram Naraim and Aram Tzova. V'asayevusi somach l'Yushalayim adayin lo horish. He had not done battle with the Yevusi around Yerushalayim. That's going to come later on. Amar lo Amokam esayevusi somach lepatron and shalcha lo irashta. You haven't even cleaned up the Yevusi near your capital. Heichata choizer mechabish Adam Naraim v'Aram Tzova. Still, in Kolza Ozra Hashem Yisbarach v'Yitzliach David M'chol Ma'asav. It shows us again how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loved David HaMelech. That even though L'chora David is doing not what he's supposed to be doing based on his Sifri, Hashem is still helping.
Yeah, the Mayam Loe says the same thing, that these lands in Syria were personal conquests and not for the sake of conquering all of Israel, of Eretz Israel.
Correct.
Nevertheless, Hashem was with him in deliverance in whatever he undertook.
Pasuk Zayin. Vayikach David et shiltei hazahav asher hayu lavdei Hadazar. Apparently, the servants of Hadazar, that king in Aram, had shields made of gold. David took it as booty, vayiviem Yerushalayim. Now, the first pasuk we learned tonight, we said that all these battles David was doing to prepare for the binyan of Beis Hamikdash through Shlomo. So Rashi is here. Let's read Rashi. Kol haparsha salalu samchan eitzel parsha shel Beis Hamikdash. Lefi shemikol melchama salalu kitza kedoshes l'tzarchei habayis. All the booty that David HaMelech captured in these battles, he designated for Beis Hamikdash. Harisha Kiddush David es kol shlal melchamos ha'elu. He gave it to Hegdish, all of this gold and silver. L'tzorach being Beis Hamikdash. There's a pasuk Yud Aleph Gamotam Higdish HaMelech David LaHashem im hakesef azov asher higdish mikol hagim asher kavash. So this is not for his personal aggrandizement. Later on in Divrei Yomim, the pasuk it's going to say, "Bo asa shloim es yaman achoshes." With this copper, which we're going to see in a minute, he took copper as well. Shlomo HaMelech built it was like a big pool, the copper pool that Shlomo HaMelech built. V'samudim es klen achoshes shishtam shlomo ba'amas be'ela biza shalach hadav v'chamas. So there's a strong connection between these parshios and the eventual building of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, there's a Yalkut Shimoni commenting on that I want to learn. This is a pasuk in Malachim, in Perek Zayin Malachim, when it says Vatishlam kol hamlacha, Shlomo HaMelech finished all the work of the Beis Hamikdash. Asher asa Melech Shlomo Beit Hashem. Vayavesh Shlomo et kodshei David aviv et hakesef et hazav et hakelim natan ba'otzro Beit Hashem. All of this gold and silver that his father brought, Shlomo HaMelech put into the storehouses of the Melech. Why didn't he use them? So the Yalkut Shimoni says, Yesh dorshin l'shvach, v'yesh dorshin l'gnai. Some say this was a praise, some say it was not a praise. L'shvach, David bikesh l'adavar, amar l'fanav ribona elamim, So Fani b'nevuates shesaf Beis Hamikdash utterly charev. David HaMelech saw in a nevuah that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed. The Kol Masha Parashti mibatei avodas elilim. I had gotten all of this gold and silver from the various houses of idolatry. So David HaMelech was happy that Shlomo HaMelech did not eventually use his gold and silver, because the Oivdei Elilim would say, Maya David Sover Echriv Bat Elokeinu V'asab Beit Elohav Ninaru Eloheinu V'govenik Mosam V'echriv Beit Elokav Lekach Nitzpal Shlo Yitztarach Lem Shlomo. David HaMelech, in fact, davened that his son Shlomo would not need this gold and silver, because he was concerned that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Goyim would say, oh, our idols took nakama on the Jewish people because David had stolen this gold and silver. So David in Nevuah, davened that he doesn't want it to be used. Others say, no, that we're going to learn soon that in the time of David was a terrible famine for 3 years. Now, if he had all this gold and silver gathered, why should he have opened up his storehouses and feed the people with the gold and silver? My children are dying of famine. You're gathering money to build a house? You know what? Your son Shlomo is not going to need the gold and the silver. So you see two different ways to learn Pshat. Lemaisa Shlomo Melech did not use it. Either because not to say, for the Goyim to say when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, it's an akama. And you have to say David HaMelech actually wanted to be magdish all of this assets to the Beis Hamikdash, but Lemaisa wasn't used. But the copper was used. The Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, the Abarbanel learns that the reason why David HaMelech was magdish the gold and silver to the Beis Hamikdash because of the lav of that lo yarbe lo kesef v'zav. It says v'kesef v'zav lo yarbe lo ma'od. So he didn't want to accept it for his personal asset. Let's learn the Rambam. When it says lo yarbe lo kesef v'zav, that's la'niach b'gnozov. It means for the king to just have a storehouse with gold. Ulehit ga'ot bo, ulehit na'ot bo. He wants to brag. He wants to show off. Rather, it should be used. He should gather money to be able to pay his army and his servants. To have money, says the Rambam. If money is gathered for the community needs, for their wars, you should have a lot of money. The Isser for a Jewish king is to accumulate private funds. He gets malchus if he does. So that gives us a little insight. The Ran says the whole point of ostering a Jewish king, it's going to lead to high taxes. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to him through a gift because he conquered a nation, they had money, that doesn't fall into this Isser, according to the Ran. Pasuk Ches. Umi betach umi berosav arei adazar. Lakach melech David nechoshet arbem. These were towns also with this melech Hadazar, and he took copper. We said this copper was going to be used for the Yam and the Choshas that Shlomo Melech built in the Beis Hamikdash. Pasuk Tes. Vayishma Toi Melech Hamat. Hamat is to the north of Syria. Ki hika David kol chel Hadazer. That he heard that this David had killed the soldiers of Hadazer. Vayishlach Toi et Yoram ben Olam Melech David. So Toi knows what the score is. So he sends his son to negotiate with David. Lishal Oloshon, to make peace. Ulevarcho, to bless him. Allah shen ilcham b'Hadazer vayakeyu. Apparently, Hadazer was the enemy of Toi. We know what it says. The enemy of my friend is my friend. So if David had wiped out Hadazer, so all of a sudden he's friends with Toi. Ki ish milchamot Toi Hadazer. Toi was in bad terms with Hadazer. He also had gold, silver, and copper, and he gave it to David as well through friendship. Yud Aleph. This David also designated to the Beis Hamikdash. Yud Beis. Me Aram umi Moav umi Bnei Ammon umi Plishtim umi Amalek umi Shlal Hadazer ben Rechov Melech Tzova. This accounts the various kings that he took booty from. Vayas David Shem b'shuvo me'akotot Aram b'gei Melech. David HaMelech made a name for himself when he came back from the battles with Aram. Shmona Asar Elef. He had struck 18,000 men in the Valley of Salt. Says Rashi, Shekavar es harugim shaharag be'edom. He buried the men that he had killed in Edom. V'hu shem tov liYisrael shekovrim esoveim. It's a good shame that the Jews get that they bury their enemies. At the end of Milchemes Gog uMagog, it's going to say v'kavru kol am haaretz vayalem l'shem. Now, we're going to learn a little bit. Is it a mitzvah, or what about this? Is it a mitzvah to bury non-Jews? So in Gittin, Samach Aleph Amud Beis, Torah Rabbana, Mefarnesim Aniyei Nachrim Imani Yisrael. If you have poor goyim in your city, you give charity to them, just like you give to poor Jews. Umevakrim Chole Nachrim Im Chole Yisrael. If you have a friend who's a non-Jew who's sick, you can mevakir Chole. The koivri meisei Nachrim and meisei Yisrael, and you can bury non-Jews. Mipnei darkei shalom, because we live in one society with them. It's the ways of peace. So from there, ein chiyuv likbor meisei akum in Torah. It's because of darkei shalom. The Rambam paskins that way. Koivri meisei akum, you can bury dead non-Jews. Umenachem avaleim, and you can provide comfort for their mourners. Umevakrim choleim, says the Rambam, mibnei darkei shalom. It's not Meikar Adin, it's because of ways of peace. V'chein pasuk Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch paskins the same way. And that's why now we understand the pshat, why they're praising David HaMelech here, but he did it because it's not really a chiyuv to do it. Rashi, yes.
Where on this map, where is Amalek?
No, Amalek is Amalek. I don't think had a specific area. Remember, Vayarav Banachal. They didn't have an area designated like Moab and Edom and all these other places. But remember, Shaul and David go, and it was near the Chever HaKeni, where Yael were. But it's not designated as their own place. Now,
Isn't it considered Edom? Edom is to the south, beneath Yam HaMelech. At least there's a map in here
Why-
that shows that.
why
You may
is
always-
Amalek, he says Amalek was with Edom?
Amalek, isn't that Esau, Edom?
No, Amalek is Amalek. And
But he's an
Amalek,
offspring of Edom.
yeah, okay, so maybe he lived in the Edom area.
When Bnei Yisrael was attacked by Amalek when they left Mitzrayim, what area was that in?
No, they were in the Midbar.
Mhm.
They were in the Midbar, they were in the desert, they were not in Eretz Canaan. They were attacked. That's even, that they were attacked after Kriyas Yamsuf.
So that would be, oh, something's here.
I just sent that map from the Mayam Loes to show you where Edom is. It's on the WhatsApp.
Yeah, well, I saw in the picture above that, you can see Edom is to the south of Moab.
Okay.
Okay, so we just want to say that the fact that David HaMelech buried him is considered a big mitzvah. Now, the Ramban learns differently. He says, Kvuras Akum is min Torah. That you have an obligation not to leave the bodies around because it's going to cause tumah. So there's a chiv min Torah to bury them. Not necessarily because of Darkei Shalom. Now, if it's, according to Ramban, it's a mitzvah min Torah, so then why is David praised so much that he was involved in the kavura of these non-Jews? If it's only Darkei Shalom, so it's praised. Now the Chassam Sofer answers, what was the special praise of David, even though it's a mitzvah min Torah? So as a king, he didn't have to bury them. To break the sort of the yoke of his enemies, he could let the vultures get them. So even according to the Ramban's pshat that there's a mitzvah in Torah, the Melech has a right to let them just sit there. But David HaMelech did not do so. He buried them. So again, we see the chesed of David HaMelech. Now, Medrash Tanchuma says like this. Vayaz David Shem B'shuvo Makosos Aram. David made a name when he came back. Now, who is known as the Arami? Lavan HaArami, right? Our forefather, the mother of
The father of Rivka.
Rivka, the father of
Yeah.
So Kishalach Yoav, who was the general of David, Lilachem and Aram Naram Yatzulik Ratov Amrlo, Atap Mibnei Banav Shel Yaakov. You, Yoav, are the grandchildren of Yaakov. Va'anu b'nei Banav Shel Lavan, and we are the grandchildren of Lavan. V'rayat Nai Shelahem, Eida Galazeh, Ve'eda Matzeva, Imani lo avoy lechat Galazeh, V'matalo tavoy layat Galazeh, V'tamaytzav Lara. They made a bris called Galeid between the children of Lavan and the children of Yaakov, that they would not fight each other. So Kishashama Yoav Kach Chazar Yitzel David. Yoav did not fight with them. He went back to David. Amalei, Mata Me'ar Reit Nai Shvuas Yaakov. I mean, this is already a shvua that we made with Yaakov and Lavan. Yad Hoishiv Sanhedrin Lalame. Lamdu V'Amrlo Be'emes Kachayat Nai El Shehem Avru Tchila. Again, the Arameans broke it first. Bilam Arasha Lo Amar Min Aram Yancheni Balak Melech Tzipor V'Kushan Mishasayin Lo Shibet Israel Kivan Sharulam Sanhedrin Kach Chazvaim V'Hargum. So Yoav went back and killed everybody. So again, they were the one, Bilam, there are Chazal who say Bilam was Lavan. It's just one and the same. Now, it's like 500 years different, or 400 years different. So some say no, Bilam was its own person, but some say Lavan was a magician and he's Bilam. Either way, they broke the treaty first. That's why David HaMelech had the right to kill them. Now, Ellen asked the question, well, when he did battle, didn't he go ask Sanhedrin first? Here, it sounds like when he originally sent Yoav, he didn't ask Sanhedrin, right? Then he had to come back and tell them about what they had said to him, and then Sanhedrin sat and dealt with it. So how could that be? So the Musar Navim explains, Rak b'melchemes to koifin esam latzeis l'melchama, az be'inin sheyel pi Sanhedrin. Like what Bernie said before, from Melchemes Mitzvah, for example, for conquering the Sheva Ha'amim, there's a gius, there's a draft. You can force the Jews in the army. So on that kind of Milchama, you need Sanhedrin. But Surya, in many places, is Kibush Yachid. It was just David HaMelech, was without, and therefore he got volunteers in his army. He didn't force them to come. He paid them. After Loimer says the Musar Nevi'im, the Mashayu Nimlochim b'Sanhedrin Zerakim Yesh Tzorech La'ad Latzeis Milchama. If the Sanhedrin saw a need for the people to go out in battle, Ki Bizman Shein Am Yisrael Tzrichin Parnot. Listen to this. Ki Bizman Shein Am Yisrael Tzrichin Parnasa Lo Hayu Yotzei L'Milchama. When the Jewish people had a good economy, they didn't go to war. The Chachamim would come to David HaMelech in the morning. They would tell David HaMelech the people need to make money. So this is already economics. He told them, do business among yourselves. You be a shoemaker, you be a butcher. It means you create an economy among yourselves. Each one of you make an economy, and therefore there'll be parnasa. Amrlo, ena komitz must be a sari. Veina bar mitzvah michal Yosef. But they don't have anything to start with. Armelam lechuvi is pashes bigadud. You know what? Let's go out and fight war. Miyad yoatzim b'achitofel v'nimlachim b'Sanhedrin. Says the Haredi Yevshar Hayal Atzeit l'Milchama Kim Kishayu Zukukim l'Parnasa. So there you needed Sanhedrin to evaluate, is it a doichik parnasa? What came to my mind learning this is classic guns and butter. The United States a few times has gotten out of its, we were in a severe depression, 1929, the 1930s, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he tried the New Deal, the WPA, they built Hoover Dam. There was tons of, none of it solved the depression. Only one thing solved the depression: World War II.
Right.
And they made so many planes and tanks, so by the time the GIs came back in 1945, it was a boom. It was a boom like we never had. And the GI built, and Eisenhower built all the freeways, and all the universities were built post the late 40s, the 50s. The guns and butter lasted almost till Vietnam. In Vietnam, there was also some kind of mini depression. They went back to war. They started making the helicopters, everything for Vietnam. It again boosted the economy. Very similar to what we're learning here.
Also, it says in Pasuk Yodalid, V'yosha Hashem es David. So obviously Hashem was on David's side because he helped him be successful.
Right. By the way, Moab, we have the, remember the Torah says, Al Tatsar et Moab. They also gave a strict commandment, don't shepherd with Moab. How did they start fighting with Moab? So there the Mepharshim also said Moab already broke when they Remember, Klal Yisrael asked to travel through, we want bread and water, and they were refused. So they also broke the treaty first. So I want to finish the parak. Vayasem bedom nitzivim b'chol edom sham nitzavim. David HaMelech placed emissaries in Edom. Vayikol Edom avadim l'David v'arsha shem David kol hashala. Then Tesvav. Vayimloch David al kol Yisrael vayi David osem mishpat utzedakah l'chol amo. He did righteousness and justice. It was because David did Mishpat Utzedakah that Yoav was Matzliach. It's like Shoftim v'Shotrim. David is the Shofet, Yoav is the Shoter. They each one need the other. It means Shofet ain't Shoter. It means Shoter ain't Shofet.
The fact that, I'm sorry.
Go
to
ahead,
interrupt.
Barbara.
The fact that Yoav was busy with taking care of battles, that freed David up to be able to, to judge favorably, because he wasn't busy with the battles. It was Yoav, who took on that
And it's a
responsibility.
partnership. I'm thinking about the Torah, the IDF in Israel goes out and fight, but the people that learn give them ruchniya support. Very similar. Very similar. It says in Sanhedrin, Vayi David oseh mishpat utzedakah, kol mokom sheyesh mishpat ein tzedakah. Mishpat is din. Tzedakah means you're being righteous. You're not necessarily following din. And if you're doing tzedakah, ain't mishpat. So what kind of mishpat is tzedakah? Says the Gemara there, bitzua, compromise. So David HaMelech's method of adjudication was through compromise. Right? He didn't do strict din. Compromise is mishpat utzedakah. Not only that, says the Gemara there, if he would find a litigant who was poor, but he said that the litigant owed money, so David HaMelech would pay the poor person's debt out of his pocket. That's mishpat utzedakah. It's another shot in how David HaMelech, as a judge, did mishpat utzedakah. That he did the mishpat, but if the guy couldn't afford to make the payment, he did it himself. Pasuk Tet Zayin.
Can I interrupt you a second? Just to tell you that the Me'am always compares it to Avraham Avinu in Lech Lecha, where there it says tzedakah and mishpat, whereas by David HaMelech the order is reversed, mishpat and tzedakah. So obviously Avraham Avinu is trying to be makarev people, whoever was, he tried to bring concept of HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the world for all those around him. So tzedakah was more important, loving kindness and help and charity, righteousness. Whereas by David HaMelech, because he was a melech, a king has to first show that he acts from a standpoint of justice, judiciously. So he establishes the rule of law, and then he can show compassion by righteousness. So the order is reversed.
That's a very shot approach that the Malmuez is taking, not a drush approach. It's just the common that the king has to establish a set of laws. Then we're given the names of the people that were in David's administration. Yoav ben Tzruya was the general, al tzava. V'Yoshafat ben Achilud Maskiri was the secretary. V'Tzadok ben Achituv Achimelech ben Aviatar Kohanim. Tzadok ben Achituv was from the family of Elazar. Achimelech ben Aviatar was the Kohen Gadol and Nov that Shaul HaMelech killed through Doeg. He was from Itamar. Ushraya Soifer, he was the scribe. Uvenayahu ben Yehoyada v'akresi v'aplesi uvnei David Kohanim ayu. So what's this? So Kresi, one shot is the people who use the bow and arrow, and the Plesi were the ones who used the slingshot. But the Gemara says the Ralbag says Crazy Placey were two important families. And the Marie Cross says the Crazy Placey were two nations that joined Klal Yisrael to be with David HaMelech. But the Gemara in Brachos, Dalid, Benoya ben Yehoyada is the Sanhedrin. They have Yasser Elohim V'tumim. That's why it says Uvnayahu ben Yehoyada ala Crazy v'la Presi, because Crazy Placey refers to the Sanhedrin. What's Crazy Placey? Crazy shekorsim divram. They cut their words. Placey shemuflo im divram. Their words are wondrous. So the Crazy Placey is another word for the Sanhedrin. Then we see that his children, Bnei David Kohanim, the Gemara in the Dorim says, Amar Rav Shoyle l'tzum Rabbana l'meimar tzum Rabbana na Shoyle l'tigroi b'reisha. A Talmid Chacham at tzum Rabbana can say, I'm a Talmid Chacham, and you can call me up first for Kohen. Where do we learn that? From here, Uvnei David Kohanim, because they were Chachamim, and they were treated like Kohanim. Ma Kohen notul b'rosh, av Talmid Chacham notul b'rosh. The Kohen gets that from the pasuk in Vayikra v'kidashto. He gets Kohen, he gets to bench, but a Talmid Chacham can be treated the same way. There were Talmid Chacham that would call themselves up Kohen. Okay.
Which sons would they be referring to here? Where it says B'nai David.
Right now, let's assume all of them. Certainly Shlomo HaMelech is, right, one of the sons is a Talmid Chacham, right? But there's going to be others. We'll see. Let's assume all of them were.
Right, but I thought at this stage Shlomo wasn't born yet.
We're not, there's Ein Mukdam U'Meucher B'Torah. Bathsheba, we haven't been told the story of Bathsheba yet, but I think we mentioned her already.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know yet that Shlomo wasn't born here.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other comments, arrows, questions? So we'll be ready for Perek test next week.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.